Dan, why did you personally pursue high performance?
Steve, initially I didn't. Initially, I spent the first 2 months after Lamont said this is the direction we were going, trying to do everything I could to get out of going to that first retreat in Phoenix. On the first Monday morning, I recall going to class and being there with the other guys. Was quite nervous about what we were going to do, quite anxious about it. And the first thing Loretta saw that day is, I think, she wanted to know where we were in terms of a commitment, why we were there. And we put up an alignment chart. And the first question that day was, where are you on this chart? And what I saw that day was a level that looked like right where I was. It was not aligned, but complying. And which means I didn't really understand why Lamont wanted to do this, and I wasn't really in sync with him, but I was complying with his wishes for me to be there. As we went into that day, our first exercise was to work through blind spots. And I always thought blind spots were something my peers had, but I didn't think I was having any kind of impact on people within the culture. And as I finished that exercise, I began to realize that there were behaviors that I didn't know about that were impacting others in the workplace. The next morning, we moved into core values. And we went through a core value exercise with my peers that I had known and worked with for years. And went around the room, and what I began to see is why we approach things the way we do, why we look at things in a certain type of perspective. And I began to see that there's a lot of our core values were the same as leaders. From there we went through an exercise the next day where we actually told our story. Each one of us had an opportunity as we went around the room to talk about where we came from, where we started, how we moved up through the company. And again, what I found is that we had very similar stories. And what was happening is that guys that had worked together for a lot of years were building a relationship. And along the way, we did some exercises that allowed us to kind of find out how we were having impacts on people outside the work environment. And again, in a discussion with my wife, I found out that one of my other blind spots was that I had been hearing her, but I hadn't really been listening to her. And so I began to realize that I was doing things that were having impacts on other people. As we moved into the third day of the class, Lamont that morning started the class by calling a timeout. And what he wanted to do that day was talk to us about some things that had really been on his mind. And he told us in that moment that he wanted us to know that he believed that he had the best leadership team in his experience with the company. That he believed that we all had a strong relationship coming into this program, but it was a relationship that he thought could be better, and that he believed in each one of us. And before we moved forward that day, Lamont said, and I want these guys to know I am truly committed to their success. And in that moment with Lamont saying that to me, I knew I had my first committed partner. And I understood in that moment the value that this was going to bring to the company if we could move it through our leadership team and if we could move it through the rest of the culture. The opportunity to take high performance out to the company and the value that it could bring. And that was the moment that I look back on and know that that's when I chose to pursue high performance.